One of my favorite people of all time coming up this week on In Goal Radio, the podcast presented by The Hockey Shop, thehockeyshop.com, source for sports Langley, Darren Millard with Kevin Woodley and the returning David Hutchison back from his assignment. Today, we are going to discuss the Sense Arena feature interview with Rick Knickle. All things goaltending. It's just a long-winded, great commentary of goaltending and where the goaltending position has come from the past, and he's a hockey lifer, so looking forward to that. Really cool guy. And we're going to get into a lot when it comes to the gear segment with the knee pads and how to wear them specifically is a really cool idea, as Woodley has been spending a lot of time over at the Hockey Shop.
It's my favorite place to be, except here with you. When you said that you're going to be talking with one of your favorite people, Darren, I just assumed that was going to be me, so...
Hey, speaking of favorite people, I was with you on this trip to the Hockey Shop.
Hutch was over. It was great. We got lots of good video. Evidently, we do better things when Hutch is around to film the Hockey Shop videos. We get more creative because I've actually had NHL goalies tell me that they've seen the one we did recently all over their social, where the Bauer customizer, and they think, literally had an NHL goalie tell me how hilarious it is when Cam's just mindlessly typing on the... So people are seeing them. I guess that's credit to the cameraman and the multiple angles. So we got to get you over here more, Hutch, for those. I'll be back at the Hockey Shop. Speaking of customizers, I will be back at the Hockey Shop this week to film the CCM eFlex 6 customizer, because that launches not long after this podcast launches. On Tuesday, April 4th, you will be able to customize your CCM eFlex 6. And much like our recent hit on the new Bauer Hyperlight 2, as soon as you can customize it, you can also order it. And not a lot of people really understand that. Customizer is more than just time to kill a weekend making pads look pretty. It actually means you can order it. And what better place to order it, as we illustrated with the Bauer launch, and we will with the CCM launch, than with the people that actually understand it. People that have the pads in their hands, that understand how the new knee fits. Is it going to fit higher or lower than other models with the changes? What size should I order? What strapping is custom? What is stock? What options do I have? Cam and his crew at the Hockey Shop, thehockeyshop.com, will make sure that you order what you need and get what you want when that order shows up, because there's nothing worse. You can fill out that form, do all your ordering. What happens if a stiffer boot or a softer boot has changed the way the knee stack sits relative to your last set? Do you need to go up a size, down a size? These are the types of questions you need to have answered before you place an order for thousands of dollars of equipment. So the customizer is great. It's an exciting time. Design your gear. But before you order it, make sure you talk to Cam and his crew at the Hockey Shop to make sure you get what you need and what you want. Get it right at thehockeyshop.com.
Is Jack Campbell using the customizer or the Hockey Shop right now? Because he seems to be testing out all kinds of gear.
New Bauer glove the other night after a mid-season switch to Bauer, or to Brian's from Vaughn. Brian's pads, blocker, glove. And I'm told Bauer Connect skates in the locker room and on the ice, so far for practice only, not in games. There is a guy who appears to be a goalie geek at heart. He is trying it all out, trying to find something he likes. It looked pretty good wearing that new Bauer glove. I'm told it's a mock. It was skinned Hyperlight 2, but someone said it was a mock closure. I haven't had a chance to check in with my people inside that room, but at the end of the day, it's a shutty. I think it stays. Nice shutout too.
Yeah, but interesting that it's the second in-season gear change of the year, Hutch.
Sure is. There aren't a lot of guys that would have the courage to do that. Do you think he's going to stick, or does this make him feel like making a change along the way is not a problem? There really are sort of two kinds of guys, aren't there? The ones who want it absolutely dialed in the same way, the same fit, the same feel all season long, even career long. We know some guys won't make changes. And then there's other people who just say, I can play in anything. Or the guys that are just looking for that next little fix. I think it's kind of refreshing for all us beer leaguers that he's willing to pull something new out, isn't it?
Because I agree with you. I don't think that there's anything really wrong with it.
No. The only thing that would make it better is if Woody talked to those guys in the locker room and found out that he's using a warm-up stick as well.
Oh, I'm on that. I'm absolutely on that now. Listen,
I think he's such a gearhead. You got to get Jack to join you at the hockey shop for one of these film sessions because he could probably give you the rundown.
we have to do that because he does spend some time out here in the offseason. Still comes out to see Dusty Emu, who was his coach, obviously, with the Los Angeles Kings when he was in that organization. So, yeah, I think we got to make that happen. Listen, I'm all for this. My beer league team, because obviously we test a lot of equipment. Got a new set of eFlex 6 sitting here right now, right on the eve of playoffs. New CCM eFlex 6 chest protector that I broke out in our last game of the regular season, our last few games of the regular season. They get nervous. Uh-oh. Woody's got new gear. He comes in talking about his new gear. He's got a built-in excuse tonight, right? I think they're a little worried that I'm going to pull out new gear right for game one of the playoffs. After watching Jack Campbell, why wouldn't I?
You will.
Do you think
surely that chesty's got to be the biggest change, though, Woody? All the stuff you've tried recently, what's the toughest change for you to pull out for one game?
It would normally be a chest protector or pants, just because of the stiffness of new pants. There's a break-in required, I find, for pants. I got to be honest, that CCM eFlex 6 chest protector was not a big adjustment. I was surprised at how ready to go out of the box it was, and the size, the way it sort of fills profile-wise. Remember, I'm a guy who said he would never leave his Premier. Like, it was like when they changed the grooves on golf wedges, and I went and bought multiple sets of Cleveland wedges with the old illegal grooves for more spin. I still have a set that I haven't broken out in the golf course yet.
Don't anybody ever bet with Kevin on the golf course because he's cheating.
Well, I mean, if you've seen my swing, you should bet like crazy because it's the ugliest thing in the world.
It's
Eddie Lack.
Jim Furyk.
Note to Eddie Lack. I know you have the video of that swing, Eddie. If you ever show it publicly, you're dead.
I might have one.
So, listen, I may switch, honestly, eFlex 6 chest protector. And so I was surprised because you're right, Hutch. Normally, and Jack evidently switched chest protectors this year as well. And to me, that's a bigger thing than pads. Glove is pretty big, but it's bigger than pads for the most part because it's such a personal fit thing. So I will say, yeah, I'm loving the eFlex 6 chest protector. Can't wait to show that to the rest of the world when it hits the public. So light. That's been the feedback. We've got it out tested with multiple guys, and how light it is and how airy it is has been the early positive feedback. But I digress. To me, that would be the biggest change, and Jack Campbell's made one of those too.
Hey, gear tip. I remember Mike Vaughn telling us when we were down there visiting one time, whether it's the new chesty or it's the new pants, stick them in the dryer. He said inside a pillowcase. I don't know when the last time was he made a chest protector that fits in a pillowcase.
Yeah.
But stick it in the dryer on fluff, not on heat, and just let it bang around in there for a little while to work it in. Good idea, especially with pants, I think.
Oh, there'd be some serious banging with this eFlex 6 one because the back piece is actually hard
plastic
plastic.
Piece, yeah.
So, anyways, can't wait to show that to the world. People are like, eFlex 6 chest protector. What the hell is he talking about? We haven't seen this yet. Yeah.
Ooh.
Tease.
Somebody's got the toy.
It's been in both in-goal offices, hasn't it?
It has.
Had to ship it overseas to Woody.
Yep.
One question on the Campbell switching. Do you think the coaches are aware or care that he's switched equipment mid-season?
I think the goalie coach probably had.
Yes, the goalie coach.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure.
Like
but the
I was gonna say the goalie coach probably had a voice in the original switch.
Yeah.
I mean, I was surprised he switched because he was I think Jack in some ways identified himself as a goaltender style-wise in relationship to those super soft, connected Vaughn pads he used to wear. The reality was, though, that thigh rise was so short and soft that pucks were just creeping through. Like, you could count them every year, like 5, 6, 7, 8 goals that would go in through that 5-hole specifically because of it. So something had to change there. And so the rest of the coaching staff, that's a good question. I have to ask whether they're made aware, whether they recognize it in game, and I would guess, depending on the results, whether they care.
just popped into my head. I'm going to send a couple of questions over there to those guys and find out if they even know that switching has taken place. We have a new looking set of gear from Devin Levi from what we saw for the last couple of years as he makes his professional debut with the Buffalo Sabres. What do you think of the skinning, Hutch, and the performance by Devin Levi?
Skinning was beautiful. I'm told you before, I've always been a huge Buffalo Sabres fan, graduate of the Buffalo Sabres Hockey School. Thank you very much. Rick Knickle. I was wondering, listening to the interview, today's feature interview, was he there? Because he mentioned a whole bunch of players who were at the camp when I was there. So that was a fun little throwback. Yeah, definitely it was required viewing for us in this house to see Devin Levi make his debut for the Sabres. And it was fantastic. On the one hand, it was in the beginning of the game, it was good on them for locking it down. They've got the young guy in there making his debut, so they made life real easy for him for the first half of the game, and good on them for that. But then he had to step up huge in the third period. Got to see the efficiency of his game, got to see the athleticism of his game. We really got to see the whole thing, and it was fantastic to see him get his win. And I loved that when Skinner scored the overtime goal, he immediately turned around, pointed at Levi, and skated right to him. That was just a really cool celebration.
You know what I loved? Hearing him talk about it afterwards. The media asked him, and actually I have the clip, so we're going to play it.
Did you have a favorite save of the night, especially when Fox is coming down, you're wiggling the glove in anticipation? Was there any moment that kind of made you realize the gravity of what you're doing?
I think the third period was my favorite part of the night. You know, they get a goal and then a power play, and you know it's a 2-2 game. And what are you going to do to give your team a chance to win? You know, that's when the pressure's on the end of the game, and those are the moments I love. You know, I was just having fun out there. I wanted some one-timers on that power play. I wanted them to find the seam and test me. You know, I feel ready, so I just wanted to be tested tonight, and I'm excited moving forward.
What are you saying to yourself when you see Artemi Panarin stepping up on a loose puck right in the middle of the slot?
Oh, I love it. There's nothing else I'd rather. You know, that's why I'm there. I'm there to stop the puck. You know, if I didn't want that to happen, I think there'd be something wrong. So it's my job. So I just love what I do, and it's, you know, no other guy that I'd want in the slot with me one-on-one. So
what I love about that is they're asked about the big moments in the third period when he was under fire, and the way you're not going to see it on the podcast. You see the smile. If you go find the clip, we'll post it on our social media, because the smile on his face talking about facing Panarin in the slot, welcoming those opportunities, not just accepting them and dealing with them, but wanting them, embracing those grade A chances in key moments of a tight game in your first time in the NHL. Not being worried about getting blitzed in the third period, but actually wanting it to happen. And it reminded me so much of stuff we've heard from Pete Fry about, you know, welcoming a penalty kill situation in a tight game, preparing yourself mentally by saying you want this to happen. You want to have to face a breakaway because it helps you prepare for it. We heard it in the 7 keys to Dylan Ferguson's NHL debut being a success. That was one of the keys. That's up at InGoalMag.com. 8 keys, pardon me. It's up at InGoalMag.com, where Pete Fry walked us through those elements based on his experience with Dylan in that NHL debut. That was one of them. And you really hear it come out in that clip from Devin Levi.
I like the fact that he works on breakaways in the warm-up. Like, that he goes through those reps. That was neat to see. Not everybody does that, but I feel like it happens more and more.
Henrik Lundqvist, baby. Remember Lundqvist, that inside out, goal line out goaltender, and yet at the end of every sort of pregame warm-up would be a series of breakaways to let him sort of get his timing on the flow and the feel, and that was something he added as his career went on. I love it.
Awesome stuff as the evolution of the Buffalo Sabres continues. And from a guy making his professional debut to an old guy trying to get back in. What was the deal with the video that I saw of Curtis Joseph walking down the hall at Scotiabank Arena with his hockey bag over his shoulder? Some scuttlebutt that he was the e-bug.
Certainly saw that online. The Leafs issued or through reporters have said that he was not the official e-bug. Like that's the company line, but which leaves us guessing, why was he hauling his gear down there? Maybe there's a skate after the game. I don't know. But boy, what do we think? What if he was? Okay, so he wasn't. What if he was?
I don't know when the last time he played goal, because he's a very accomplished defenseman when he does play hockey these days.
I know a few NHL teams that might use him on the back end instead of as an e-bug.
Can you imagine pulling a guy that's been retired for 10 years and putting him in as the e-bug? Do you guys have a name from the past that you'd love to say? Bernie Perron in the Winter Classic, the one year, was awesome. Just to see him make one save and he was gone. But that was cool. But a name that you'd love to see back out there again?
Well, I mean, how could you not want to see Dominik Hasek? I have a funny feeling the guy'd still be really good too. Ken Dryden probably would struggle to get onto the ice at his age right now, but I think I would love to see him out there as well. Like the more guys you can bring back and involve in the game, the better. It would be every bit as exciting as it is to see the local Zamboni driver get into a game as well. Like, I'm just all for it. The one thing I would say is it drives me nuts when the e-bug can't actually sit on the bench if it happens halfway through the game, right? Like, they're supposed to just sort of stay in their gear in the dressing room or something. It's only if they begin the game as the backup that they're allowed on the bench. Because why not have them there so we can enjoy that experience and they can enjoy it as well? But
just to clarify, you know why that is?
He hasn't signed the contract.
I don't.
Well, he hasn't signed the contract, and there's no guarantee he's going to end up playing for that team, because if 2 injuries happen to the other team, he has to go over. Enough. He has to go over and play for that team.
Well, let's have a little bench, have a little stool between the benches then. They can wear one of those, they can wear one of those jerseys. Like, you've seen the parents who have a kid on both teams and they sew the jersey up. Let's put that on the e-bug and put them right in the middle then.
Don't they do it? As soon as one might come into action, Darren, don't they have to call the second one on the list to come to the rink?
I don't know whether, but they may not have that guy there in time.
But I do believe they have to have a second guy on the list that they can call and is supposed to be in short order. The rules have changed so much over the years. And one of the rules, speaking of that, was it wasn't that long ago. I don't know what the rules are now, but it wasn't that long ago that Curtis Joseph wouldn't have been an option because he played in the National Hockey League. And I don't think that's the case anymore, because if I remember correctly, Andrew Raycroft ended up being an e-bug one night this year, right out of the Ness and Bruins broadcast. It was this year or last year where he had to get somebody to go get his gear from home. So, it's the rules change all the time when it comes to e-bugs. I can't figure it out. Still sort of enjoy the stories where they get in, and there's still a little part of me that, like, we're a $5 billion industry. How the hell have we not figured out how not to have some random guy end up between the pipes?
It's the best. No, don't ever change that, Woody. It's the best thing. The
Archer's
one rule that
Urbe
needs to change, though, is they got to make it possible for Darren Millard to be the e-bug one night.
I want to see Archer's Urbe in there.
Ooh,
way ahead.
With the original gear.
Yes.
With the original pads.
Well, he still got it.
He'd be sewing them on the way to the rink, filling another hole.
What about you, Woody? Any names jumping out at you?
No, not really. It's a tough one. I'd probably go with Hasek just because, there was such a thinking man's element to the way he played, and it was so unique that I think it would probably screw up some shooters to see that style. Like, I you know what? Actually, any of the old stand-ups, like Hasek wasn't a stand-up per se, but like, you've seen it.
Kelly Rudy.
We've all seen it. If you play at beer league, you've seen it, because we're sort of in a generation where, well, I started late, but you guys played the old way, but now you play the new way. But there are still guys out there in beer league that play the old way. And I got one on a skate I play in where everyone is really high. Well, the shooters are really high end. I said everyone. I'm there, so clearly not everyone. But the shooters all play junior college, or in a lot of cases pro, right up to the NHL. And there's a guy who played college in goal at the other end on a lot of nights, who still, like, he'll come out of the crease, Nabokov style, outside of the post, just square up on guys on sharp angles, and they just consistently pump pucks into his chest because they're expecting him to drop into a reverse VH and put it by their ear like they do to me all the time. I'm telling you, some guys would be flummoxed, just as JT Miller was earlier this season when Craig Anderson went 2 pads standing straight up Nabokov style on a sharp angle chance and kicked the puck out past where JT intended the rebound to go. Like, I think some of those old styles it would take them a little while to figure it out. It would screw some guys up for sure. They'd be coming down the wing looking for a butterfly drop and putting it right in a guy's chest because he didn't drop in on the butterfly. I wonder how long it would take for them to figure out, hey, maybe we should throw it into his feet because he's too old to get down in a butterfly.
Ilya Bryzgalov. I'll give him a nod just for the post game.
I was going to say, even if he doesn't play, just interview him.
Yeah. Just purely for that. A championship awarded. Congratulations, Woody, to the Toronto Six.
Isabel Cup, PHF champions, Carly Jackson, Elaine Chuli, who will be on the In Goal Radio podcast. Together, we're doing the tandem, like we do with the World Juniors. We're doing the tandem. A little later this week, should be up for somewhere in our next 2 episodes. Got a few guests lined up, but hoping to get them on the podcast here real soon. Excited they're making the time because they have been, speaking of that Leafs game, as much as the story at the end became Curtis Joseph after Matt Murray got hurt, nice celebration for them. They had Izzy, as they call the Isabel Cup, in the square before the game, at the game, celebrating at that Leafs game. It was really cool to see. The city has really embraced that championship. Congratulations to them on winning it. They played down at Mullet Arena in the finals. And just, can't wait to catch up with them and talk all things goaltending with Carly Jackson and Elaine Chuley.
Today's feature interview is Rick Knickle. The feature interview brought to you by Sense Arena. This is In Goal Radio, the podcast, presented by The Hockey Shop, thehockeyshop.com, source for sports Langley. The gear segment dealing with not exactly a specific manufacturer, but how to wear a piece of equipment with the knee pads.
I think we should put an asterisk, as you'll hear. This is how to wear knee pads according to Cam. There may have been some disagreement from Woody.
We may have to post our own video afterwards.
I'm with Cam on this.
Really do it, Cam.
I'm with totally Cam on this.
Okay, you can be with Cam on this. Let's listen, and then afterwards, I'll tell you who we celebrated already in the show, who's not with Cam on this. Welcome back to the Hockey Shop, Source of Sports. I'm Cam. He's Kevin.
I'm thrilled to be playing dress up again this week.
Classic. Today, we're going to talk about how to keep those knee pads from sliding down and ending up at your shins and not protecting your knees where they should be. So, a couple different ways we can do this, a couple different products. Kevin is already modeling a little bit for us. So, to start, Kevin is wearing the Vaughn padded V9.
We showed them off last week. They're on sale. Super padded. When you drop, they got a little pad to make you taller.
So, currently, you see the sock attachments. So at a basic, this is something I always recommend, socks over top of the knee pads. So I've chosen a tighter sock for Kevin here to keep it up. So what this will do is add a little bit of constriction to the knee pad and help to stop it from shifting and rotating out of place. Personally speaking, I like the tighter sock when I'm playing because it does that. Some guys find it's a little bit too constrictive.
But Cam, what if you're not an absolute tryhard like you and don't want to wear socks over your knee pads?
You have other options, which I am getting to for sure.
Tryhard.
Hey, if you're not trying hard, is it your NHL? Probably not. So, second piece that he's wearing here. So Kevin has actually a Vaughn garter belt on. So this garter belt conveniently has clips on it, which actually clip and tab into the tabs on the knee pad. So a lot of knee pads will have these nylon loops on the top of it. This will allow you to attach the garter belt up top. Now, many of the knee pads have different styles of those nylon loops or slightly different attachments. That's why we carry different garter belts. I also have this convenient Bauer garter belt as well that actually has the sock attachments and a front singular tab for the knee pads as well. Now, you can make a system like this work with this by just running a string through the middle here and through here and tabbing it on. So that gives you the ability to kind of make both systems work. Bauer has just one singular nylon loop, which ironically lines up with this. But you can just run one skate lace through here, tie a knot, and tab that in, and that's another way to help hold them up as well. Kevin, I seem to have blown your mind here for a second.
Like just like my head is spinning.
Right, good.
Cam, I take my CCM Pro knee pads, I do up the Velcro, I take a piece of sock tape and go, done. Do we really need all this?
You can't. So a couple of reasons why I'm not a huge fan of sock tape. So sock tape is constricting and cutting basically as tight as possible in one specific area. So if that slips, moves, sweat, comes undone, anything like that, where's your knee pad going? Down by your shin. So this is why these other items exist, because sock tape doesn't work for everybody. It might work for some.
Works for me. I don't have, like you got.
But it's not a be-all, end-all.
You got calves like thighs, so it's a trouble for you.
I didn't skip calf day. So if you have any questions about this, any other ideas or suggestions that I might have for keeping your knee pads up, you can give me a call at 604-589-8299 or 1-800-567-7790. If you wanted to check out some of the products that we talked about today, you can just go to thehockeyshop.com. You don't need www in there, as I'm told by Hutch.
check them all out. Any questions, Kevin?
I don't. I'm going to have to rewatch this later to figure out all your different unique little solutions. Oh, yeah. The other thing you can do other than sock tape, what about these
Don't forget about the Renera
stickies.
cant as well.
Better that you said it, not me. Can never pronounce it.
Goalie specific does have actually a sticky, almost neoprene type material right at the knee that can also help to hold up the knee pad. This doesn't seem like
We've
much,
tried it. It actually works quite well.
but it can do quite a bit for holding that knee pad up. Also comes with those convenient sock tabs we were talking about earlier about putting socks over top of your knee pads.
In case you're a tryhard or good enough to actually play on a team where you have to wear
Or
matching
you'd like
socks.
to keep your pads fresh and not ripped apart by the Velcro of the knee pads.
Not something I've ever had to worry about.
This is the longest outro ever.
Do you have sock tape?
All right, who doesn't agree with Cam?
You see the pictures of Devon Levi after his
Oh yeah,
first
the
start?
tape. Yep.
Little sock tape around the knee pads. No need for fancy socks. Anything that inhibits movement.
I wouldn't even do it that way either. I would do one little at the bottom underneath so they can't fall down.
That's all
ever.
I do.
Socks over, one strip around the bottom.
I don't
Yeah,
even need
simple.
socks over. Actually, I was going to ask, do goalies have to wear socks in the NHL? Because Levi didn't appear to be. Like I didn't see
think
team socks.
They used to. My understanding was that there was a rule in the NHL for a while because I actually remember thinking that Carey Price wasn't wearing socks one time, and then he'd actually gone to a shorter version, so he was. They barely came down below his knee, which I think maybe was a heat thing. I'm not sure. We'd have to ask him at some point. But then I agree, Kevin. I've seen a bunch of guys recently that aren't wearing socks, so either the rule's been changed or they're just getting away with it.
Marty Brodeur wore sweats that looked like socks when he played. So that was the way he got around that, if it was a rule. A reason to wear socks is because it's a little more cut-proof and helps you battle that. So there's that safety aspect.
Well, listen, I don't know how cut-proof NHL socks are these days because since they went away from the old knit, we've had more cuts. If you're not wearing, I would suggest if you're a goalie, you should probably have cut-proof socks on underneath that anyways, or cut-proof material on your leggings. The joggers is funny because we've all done it, right? Come on, we've all worn I wore jogging pants underneath, not on purpose, but because I was tough because it was a nice fresh set of Lulu joggers. Got to the rink, realized I didn't have my undergarments, and it's like, do I go bare-legged or do I wear my nice Lulu joggers? Wore the nice Lulu.
We've all
joggers.
had that conversation with ourselves.
Yes, we have. Well, not Hutch. Hutch thinks I'm a little too fancy with the Lulu joggers.
I had the even more embarrassing one. I arrived at the rink to spare for a team I'd never been with before, realized I didn't have my long underwear, didn't have any socks, and I had to walk into a room of guys I'd never met and said, "Who's got some long underwear I can borrow?"
And
it pulled it off. I got them, but asking to borrow somebody's underwear is just a little bit weird, and I won't tell the story, but there's an NHL goaltender who had to borrow mine one time, so that was also kind of strange.
Okay, so
wow,
I can top that one. Walked into the rink and realized I left my goalie cup at home.
Oh, and you played
in a player's can. Yep.
Oh, I don't think I would do that.
Hey, fastest hands he had all year, making sure he wasn't getting hit in that area.
100%. Every other game in my life, I've tried to be centered on the puck. This was basically, as we'll hear from Rick Knickle, I was basically off angle, inviting them to shoot anywhere but the middle of the net.
I have to admit,
you win, Woody.
The garter belt with the knee pads was a game changer. I love it. It keeps them together. I don't ever forget one. It's always perfectly aligned. I don't know why you wouldn't go there. Why you do any other setup?
So hold on. This is because you like it when you're wearing it, or you just don't like to lose it.
Both. It's the all-in-one scenario. I go
like
through
the
a
string
couple
he
of
used
different.
to have on his mittens growing up.
Yeah, very very similar. Very similar. And then you just pull the socks up over top, and it's go time. It's convenient and it's effective.
You know
why
what?
wouldn't you go with that?
This argument would be a lot more compelling if you weren't wearing glasses that were missing one arm and there's crooked on your face as you talk to us.
Well, if he had the old man string on his glasses, he'd know where the arm is.
I know where the arm is. It just broke. in the middle of the night in
heat
my
of
hotel
battle?
in San Jose. I'm like, what is going on here?
It was a
but
really
I keep
compelling argument until I looked up and saw you with your glasses crooked across your face.
And I don't put the knee pads on the garter belt every day. They're already attached. I just do it up, boom, boom. It's good to go.
You're on Team Cam.
This whole tape thing, yeah, Cam's brilliant.
One
I
strip,
don't know
real
why
easy.
you guys go against Cam.
Because it's fun.
Silly, because it's fun. Well, I can actually buy into that a little bit. But interesting how there's so many with that piece of equipment. There's so many different approaches to it, to how you're going to wear that. And I've seen different guys with the knee pad outside the socks, or not even socks. Which I'm with Cam. The Velcro and ripping things up. It has an effect there.
I wear them outside of my undergarments and don't wear socks, so I don't know. I mean, what the hell? I'm a beer leaguer, so I'm just going to refer to Devin Levi because he does the same.
Well, Knickle didn't have any knee pads when he played. The Sensorina VR feature interview with longtime professional goaltender went to a Memorial Cup with I still call it the greatest junior team, Canadian Hockey League team ever, with the Brandon Wheat Kings that year that they lost the Memorial Cup final to Peterborough in 1979. Brad McCrimmon played every minute of the game that went into overtime, except for when he took a 2-minute penalty. That's staggering. Bob was the guy that scored the winning goal in that one. Yeah, you guys are looking at me like, can you believe that? He played every minute of the Memorial Cup final that went into overtime, except when he took a 2-minute penalty.
Okay, so
that's got to be well, of course it's a record because that's insane.
That is nuts.
Easy to track ice time.
Probably the only way they did track ice time back then. Now listen, as we set this up and before we let Hutch tell us about Sensorina, this is can't miss because this interview is full of stories like that one. This is story time with Rick Knickle. He should have his own freaking podcast just to tell stories from his career, including how a team wanting him instead of a then unknown Patrick Waugh allowed Waugh to debut with the Sherbrooke Canadians instead of being traded to the Saginaw Generals in the IHL. Like, there are so many crazy stories in this interview. Folks, like, stick around. Can't miss it. And within those stories, some serious lessons about goaltending as well.
Hutch, Sensorina VR, what's up?
As we talk old school goaltending, as we talk Woody trying to survive out there with a Players' Cup on and giving up a side of the net so that you can make a glove save, whether it's for style or to save your upper body back in the day, that got me thinking all these things that you hear about on the podcast with us crazy three old guys talking, you might not want to try them at your next practice on the ice, but you could put Sensorina on right now, head into your living room or wherever you like to pull it out to do some training, try a little bit of old school. They update the software all the time, put cool new stuff in. Like, for example, it is beautiful and sunny out here, but I could step onto an outdoor rink right now in Sensorina and train. I think Bob and his team over at Sensorina maybe needs to get some old school, whether it's Jofa or Cooper or something, some gear you can put on when you're in Sensorina and really get a feel for what it used to be like back in the day. But more than just going back in the day, you can have the most modern training as you're now evolving into your spring season or your summer training. Let's add Sensorina to your training program because you can face shots from NHL shooters now. You can face power plays. You can be involved in penalty kills. You can do all sorts of different drills to train your skills as a goaltender, including a huge suite of neurocognitive drills as well. It's really off the ice, the best bang for your buck for training to help you become a better goaltender when next season rolls around, whether we're talking tryouts in the spring or the summer or training camp in the fall. Add Sensorina to your training program, just like Devin Levi does, one of the biggest users of Sensorina. He's one of the guys we know that sits on the couch and just watches pucks go by in Sensorina to work on his tracking. He's one of the biggest users. It's got him to the NHL. It's going to help you become a better goaltender for sure. Today, if you go to Sensorina.com, they've got that deal on still. Free shipping, free trial, free sleeves, those things that connect the Oculus controllers to your goalie gloves. And if you use the code IGM50, you'll get a little bit more off as well. Go try Sensorina.
You can be old school, but you don't have to have the palm stingers, the shoulder bruises, the
No pain.
thigh. Yeah, none of that pain.
No pain, except it's so realistic. I remember my kid Maddie got hit in the head in Sensorina, and he actually had to take the headset off, and he was a little bit shook. It was kind of funny.
Well, listen, this is a perfect segue to Rick Knickle, because one of the things we talk about is the evolution of equipment and how when he went, and make sure Maddie listens to this one, Hutch, when he arrived for her and made his first WHL team, he was so happy that he got to go rooting through the equipment room and found Glenn Hanlon's old pads. And then he found a mask, fiberglass, fitted for Glenn Hanlon, and decided that looked pretty cool and he wanted to try that too and then the coach noticed he was flinching and insisted he stay down and on top of some tip drill shots. And Rick showed me the scar over his left eye last time we were in the press box. It's a good thing he has eyebrows to cover it because it is a nasty gash. And so that is just one of many stories. Wayne Gretzky, Keith Gretzky, Patrick Waugh, a career that almost ended at age 29 with retirement, but was revitalized and ended up in the National Hockey League for the first time at age 32. Had me near tears talking about his dad and getting to see him make that trip. Just this thing, Storytime with Rick Knickle, needs to be its own podcast. It's a beautiful interview. It's over an hour, and there are very good lessons within it, both for goaltenders and in some cases, what not to do. I joke with Rick about what life would have been like if he had modern equipment when he was young. But as we talked about after the podcast ended, maybe life with a sports psychologist might have helped him a little bit more. There are lots of great lessons about what you should focus on. And Rick will be the first to admit, because he wasn't always focusing on the right things. But man, what a career he had despite that.
I'm not sure that taking Glenn Hanlon's mask was the brightest thing to do, but he was smart enough not to take his gloves, knowing that Hanlon was a lefty. In that, it's the fastest conversation you will hear on In Goal Radio, the podcast. This one will fly by with the great storyteller that is Rick Knickle, brought to you by Sensorina VR.
Beyond excited to welcome to the In Goal Radio podcast for the first time. Long overdue after several years of great conversations in the press box at Rogers Arena. Always love when I run into Rick Knickle, longtime professional goaltender right up to the National Hockey League level with the LA Kings. Also a professional scout for close to 2 decades in the NHL. Currently does some goalie development with a company he runs here in the Vancouver area called Steel Hockey, as well as a new, I guess, Team 33, a new scouting program that you're developing. We'll get into that a little bit. But first of all, just all these years of chatting in the press box, always leave me with a smile on my face. We finally get you on the In Goal Radio podcast. Rick, how are you, buddy?
Doing really well, Kevin. Yeah, it's about time. I got a lot of friends that have these podcasts and stuff, and I don't go out and solicit myself to get out there on these shows, but I love talking the business. And I'm a lifer, and getting to talk to you at the Rogers Arena and get your insight and understand, where people come from, where their backgrounds start from. And I met a lot of people on the way, and and it's interesting that you treat people, I guess, the way you want to be treated, and that's how I look at it. That everybody comes a different route in this business, and yeah, it's awesome to be on your show.
Well, your route involved 18 seasons of professional hockey. We mentioned a couple with the Kings, 17 different teams. I got 4 different leagues. So you got around. You experienced at a time when there wasn't just sort of an NHL, AHL hierarchy. There were all these different leagues, the IHL, time with the Detroit Vipers, the Phoenix Roadrunners, the AHL, even the EHL. Like, there were so many more options back then, and it was so much less structured. But let's rewind even more. How did Rick Knickle become a goaltender? This is where I love to start.
Yeah, well, I grew up in a family of hockey, right? So I got 5 boys and 1 girl in our family. My dad was a coach. I was the second youngest. A couple of my older brothers tried goaltending, but I never really paid attention to it. I wasn't that big growing up. I could play. I get good hockey sense, and I could understand the game. And I really, I don't know exactly how I got into the net. I think it was probably, I'll show you, older brothers, that I'm better than you were. And I think that was my thing, that you're always trying to prove yourself to your older brothers. And I was really quick, and I had good eye-hand coordination. And once I got in the net, it's like anything. And I've seen this as I scouted and as I run my companies, that I believe you're born a goalie. I really do. I mean, the good ones are born goalies, and other ones are trying to be a goalie, right? And I think it, I eat it, I sleep it, right? And I just gravitated to it when I was about 9 years old. And when I was 9, my dad was coaching the Pee Wee team, and my other brothers were, I think, 11 and 12. So I started out in squirt, which was with Adam, and I was really doing really well. And my dad figured, okay, can I get 3 boys on the same team? So I have to make one trip. I don't have to keep going to the rink all the time, right? I got 5 boys, and they're all playing different levels. And he brought me up to that team, and I played with a 12-year-old, and I was just as good as him. And that, I believe, is what started me on my NHL pro career, to try to aspire to be that. You always have to be above the other players, right? As a goalie, be a step ahead. And, we call it anticipation and seeing things, right? And I did at a young age. And I remember that. And I would talk to my dad a lot about it now. And he's 86 years old, and he's sharp. And we would have drives together, right? Go to the games, after the game, just me and him. And I remember asking him, how good was I when I was, 10, 11 years old? I played in the Quebec Pee Wee tournament for 3 years. I played in a lot of big tournaments that really, I think, prepared me for what I actually became. And it was something that I look at, that when I was 9 or 10 years old, I believed that you could skate. Obviously, you have to be able to skate. And we're talking 70, 71. There's no goalie coaches. I love the way the goalies play now compared to the way I played back in the day. But I was a smaller guy, so you can imagine I was probably trying to be athletic and flamboyant, which I could be.
Okay, so the game has changed massively, right? We're talking about 50 years. But some of the things you just mentioned, and I'm sure you see this as a scout, that innate ability to anticipate, to read, to process the game, to skate, especially as now in the last couple of years, it becomes east, west, and so dynamic. They're back. Like, these things matter. Maybe they always did. When you moved from playing to scouting, was that one of the things, especially when you were looking at goalies? And I know you did more than just goalies. You were, the head scout in Arizona, looking at every part of the game. But when you looked at goalies, how did you identify that innate ability to see, to read, to process?
And that's even interesting, because I played the game for so long in that position. And I tell other guys, I say, listen, I'm not the guru on goalie evaluating, scouting. I understand what I'm looking at. But if I'm not around that goalie every day, if I'm not around him and understand where his thought process, his dedication, his focus is just his understanding of position, and keep on developing. Yeah, I'm going to see him as a scout. What I'm going to see a guy how many times? 7, maybe. Other guys you want to see a little bit more. But it is a difficult position to identify and process, to see who's going to make it and who's not. Because I know how long it takes. Let's say a player's drafted at 18 and he's 22, 23 years old. We have to project 4 or 5 years. If he hasn't made it by then, okay. They move on. Guys develop at different stages in their career. Goaltending, what is it, 7, 8 years? For me, 13. But you look at everybody's development. Why didn't mine go my way? Well, I was too good, too young, and I didn't work at my craft well enough. Didn't have goalie coaches. Didn't have my dad pushed me, but not in a real hard way, but in a good way. But it's all about your self-awareness and yourself, being someone that you want to be. No one else can get you to do the training. No one else can get you to work on things. But I think a lot of it is too, is like, hey, if it isn't broken, you have to fix it.
Interesting you say that. So was that part of you're in Brandon with the Wheat Kings. I was going to say, like, you grow up in this big family. Your dad's a big part of your life. You're growing up in Nova Scotia. Spent a lot of time, I think, in the Ontario area. But now all of a sudden you're 16, 17 years old, and you're on the other side of the country by yourself playing junior hockey with the Brandon Wheat Kings. That process, what's that like? I mean, I can't compare it to what it's like today, but we didn't have the internet. We didn't have FaceTime. We didn't have all these things to keep you connected to family. How tough was that?
Mine was interesting because a friend of mine, I grew up in Nova Scotia in an Air Force base. So he lived right around the corner from me. So we grew up together, and he was a big, tough guy, defenseman. He went back out to Brandon because he had lived out in Manitoba in Portage as a 14, 13-year-old. So he went back out there, went through their system, played in Brandon. So Glenn Hanlon was playing. So he was the Wheat King goalie for 3 years. So they never really looked for a backup because he played 70 games a year, right? This is the old era, right? Back in the NHL, Eddie Johnson playing every game, Glenn Hall playing every game. So when his turn, when he graduated and got drafted, I'd already gone through my process. I'm 16, playing at home in Tier 2. We had no major junior in the Maritimes back in the day. So my closest one would be, do I know anybody in Quebec? Well, I didn't. Well, somebody knew me, but they didn't really scout me that much. It was a guy that I really knew, fairly well since at a young age. And he scouted my Tier 2 team, and my brother was a 5'7" centerman. I'm 6 feet. Okay, all my brothers are 5'7". I'm 6 feet, 5'11". Thank you.
No wonder you became a goalie.
Yeah, I mean, even back then, right? The Mike Vernons of our day, right? They're 5'8" goalies. I played in that era, right? So I wouldn't have been out of the norm. So the guy scouted, and he really never talked to us, and he scouted for the Sherbrooke Beavers. And that's where I should have ended up. If he had done his homework right, I was 16, had 3 more years of junior. He had our ages backwards. They had me as the 19-year-old and had my brother as a 17-year-old. So he never talked to my brother because he's a 5'7", 17-year-old. Good players, our captain. So I ended up contacting my buddy. I go to the Western Hockey League tryouts in Brandon. Never tried out for a team in my life, really, because I'm an Air Force kid. Everybody knows you. You grew up the ranks. So I go out there. There's 20 goalies trying out. 20 goalies. So I'm going from Nova Scotia to Brandon. I'm not going home. There's no way. That's just me, right? I'm out there. I'm going to make this team no matter what. And I've always been that way. When you push me up against the wall, my game comes out. And I've always known that, right? And maybe it hurts me in some ways of my career. I wasn't complacent, but I was very consistent. But if I needed to bring it on a big game where maybe the circumstances weren't in my favor, I would be able to do it. So I go to Brandon. Every phone call, I'd say to my dad, the list is on the wall, right? We're down to 15. We're down to 10. And I knew what goalies that I had to beat out. There's about 2 or 3 other guys that were my age, 17, looking to groom us to play 3 years of junior. So I ended up not making the team because they wanted a 19-year-old goalie to play there because they had a really good team. Like they were going to win the championship. Them and New West were in that mix in the late 70s. And like I ran into a really good situation there, right? I mean, I just didn't have to screw up. I just had to get my feet wet, hold my own. And at the end of the day, I became the best goalie in the league because of good teams help you, that your confidence gets better and you start to believe, right? So at the end of the day, I played Tier 2 in Brandon with the Travelers. And then the goalie left. He had some personal issues we won't get into. He left, and the ball was given to me for the last 40 games of the year. And I played every game for the last 40 games, I believe, around there. I didn't have a backup. This is crazy, Kevin. We had a backup, a local guy that would back up. He was a college guy. He was 20 years old. On the road, we would pick up the odd guy that was a local guy that we went ahead and I don't know why they did that. They didn't have anybody to back me up really, but not on a consistent basis my first year.
So basically you guys e-bugged. You basically e-bugged for a year.
Pretty much e-bugged, yeah. Pretty much e-bugged, right? And we had the one guy at home who was a college guy. And we loved him, right? We loved him. At the end of the year, I think like we had everything sewed up. I was a top goalie. No worries about me not getting the goalie trophy and all that kind of stuff and win the championship. And so we said, hey, put him in for a minute. He'd be able to tell his grandkids, play in the Western Hockey League. I mean, this guy was an e-bug type of goalie, but maybe not a beer league guy, but he was whatever. And that started my Western Hockey League career when I get out there, because now I go from the small pond now to the big fish, the big pond where I'm out with the big guys and I'm playing with the best team in Canada, right? You got Brian Propp and Brad McCrimmon. And, we had a lot of guys off that team who went on to play in the NHL. And it was really an experience that it opened my eyes of, how good I am to begin with. Where do I sit in this pecking order? I'm not now in Nova Scotia in a secluded area because back then nobody left and did anything from the Maritimes that anybody knew about. 3 guys did it at the same time, and all 3 were goalies. Rolly Melanson, Sean McKenzie, and myself. We're all from Halifax, Dartmouth. Rolly's from Moncton, but I knew Sean McKenzie, who went on to play in Oshawa, I believe, in Colorado draft pick or New Jersey. So there we are. We got goalies leaving, right? Because it's a different scenario. You don't have to be one of 13. If you're good enough, you're one of 2. You make the team, right? And you stay. And so I think the goalie part of it, that I knew a lot of guys that I played against that I watched. I go, wow, there's no way I'm going to be able to even get by junior A out of this area because these guys aren't even moving on. So when I got out to Brandon, it was really a good eye-opener for me that I had stepped in and took over from Glenn Hanlon, which was, he was one of the best goalies in Canada at that time.
There are so many little threads I want to pull on, not the least of which is Rolly Melanson, who's one of my favorites. But I want to ask you about that getting up, like back against the wall mentality, and bringing out your best. Obviously, you said it may not have been a good thing at the time. Looking back, do you think there would have been ways, like if you had recognized it a little earlier, or were there stages in your career where you recognized how to get to that mindset? Maybe even in times when you were in a comfortable situation. Again, you didn't want to use the word complacent, but maybe the situation was comfortable. Were you able, or did you ever try to find ways to manufacture that feeling of my back's against the wall because that's when I'm at my best?
Well, there's the kicker. I was so comfortable at a young age. And it really hurt me as I got, the only time that I had to put nobody knows me here was my training camp in Brandon. And I was never a good training camp goalie. I was never a good practice goalie, so to speak, right? I didn't really care for practice a lot. I liked when I had buddies that were into playing games, right, in practice afterwards and that type of stuff, which I was very lucky to have a lot of good teammates over my career. I played a lot of teams. But bringing your game when you really need to bring your game, it's something that I've always been self-taught. I've always been self-motivated. I was very stubborn, which hurts you. I was really stubborn. Like, I know everything, right? I know because I was so good at a young age. And for me, if I never went through any bumps in the road, and I never played on bad teams growing up. So if you play on bad teams, and I know the history of some of my goalie partners, right? Just take Kelly Rudy, for example, right? Getting cut from midget teams, getting, not being someone that he's always had to scratch and claw and fight and battle. Well, what was he as an NHL goalie and a pro goalie? He battled like anybody. Right? He was a real battling type of goalie. And he'd probably be the first to tell you that wasn't the smoothest or I wasn't the most athletic, right? But it's just how we go about stopping the puck. Back in our era, is just whatever you want to do. There's no set goalie coaches and, hey, this is what everybody's doing now and how we can do things. But for me, I was really, for myself, I think a lot of it was fear of failure, feeling that I wasn't going to be good enough. And what could I do in my life? This was something I was good at and I knew I was really good at it, so, and I'm really shocked sometimes that my career actually ended up where it ended up, because I have a lot of friends that would come and see me in practice and knew me as a 12-year-old, 13-year-old, and it's kind of like, oh wow, look where you, and people come out of the woodwork now because we have Facebook and Twitter and people that I knew them because they were my brother's friends and they're 40, 50 years ago, but. Yeah, it's interesting the career that I've had, that how I've been able to deal with a lot of stuff that allows you to stay on top of things.
Okay, so you said you didn't like practice. And I think I kind of understand why, based on a conversation we had a few nights ago in the press box. We were talking about equipment and masks. And the stories you told me about facing shots in practice and flinching, like pulling away from pucks, not staying over top of it, made a lot of sense when you started to tell me about life as a goalie back then with, fiberglass masks. Walk us through I was going to ask you to walk us through the evolution of your game, but so much of the evolution of the position is about the evolution of the equipment. So what you grew up playing in and how it changed over the years.
Absolutely, right? Okay, I'm trying to think. Okay, yeah, when I'm 10 years old, what did I get for Christmas? 11 years old. Jacques Plante mask. There was one that were the gray ones, right? They had them right down the middle, and it kind of like one here, so the puck would deflect off. right? Not really much padding underneath it, right? I don't believe I wore that. I'm not sure if it was allowed. They didn't have as many rules as they do now, but I don't think I really remember wearing it. I don't think I liked it. I think the eye holes were too small. I couldn't really see down, right? So then it evolves to where when I saw the 72 Summit Series, loved Tretchak's mask. Loved that mask, right? The Jofa, right? The combination Jofa mask, right? So I wore one of those when I was about 14. And I like that. Then it evolved to where we had the combination. We have the helmet and then the cage, right? So then I go to Brandon. Now everybody's wearing the molded mask, right? You want a little personality. I see Jimmy Rutherford had the little wings with the Red Wings, right? And that was all he had, a white mask with little Red Wings over his eyes. And I was a Red Wing fan, right? So I love Jimmy Rutherford. And so I'm playing in Brandon and I'm going through the equipment stuff, right? So I get, Glenn Hanlon's old pads. I get to wear those. And there's this mask. There's the mask, right? It's a molded mask. And I liked it. It fit well. It looked like my personality type of thing. And so practices, guys like to rip pucks high. They like to get it under the bar, right? Snap it. Curves start to come into play a little bit more. Your sticks are getting a little bit better, right? We're talking 77, 78. So the coach comes up to me and I'm doing really well. I'm playing really well. He says, I've been noticing you've been flinching on a few shots. We're going to work on some point shot tip drills in front so you'll stay down on the puck. And I see your eyes, Kevin, like getting like saucers. And that's what I'm thinking too. But I'm not going to say nothing to the coach. Where are these pucks going to be deflected to? Yeah, they're going to be deflecting up, right? And I'm supposed to be getting down. My head's going to be down. Yeah, sure enough. About 2 minutes into it, I got deflected puck right into my eye. Cut my eye. I lifted my mask up. Blood starts coming out. I figured, okay, yeah. It was lucky that it was in a good spot. It was right in the corner of my eye. Didn't damage my eye or anything. But that's one of the reasons why. I mean, we were not well protected. Here's a good story for you. I get drafted. I go to training camp. I'm sitting next to Don Edwards. Okay, Donnie Edwards. And I just got all my new Brown equipment. Just signed my contract, right? So I get outfitted with everything.
Is that the first time? Is that the first time you had all new equipment? You mentioned like I think it would shock people of this era to know that you show up in junior and you're going through the equipment bag to get Glenn Hanlon's old gear.
Yep. See what I liked? I got the Jofa pads and stuff. So I'm standing there or getting dressed, and I'm very shy. I don't say much. These guys just won the Vezina for the last 2-3 years. I get into a Buffalo situation. A lot of old guys. It was an older regime. Rick Dudley, Don Luce, Craig Ramsey. Danny Gare was a young guy, but a lot of good guys really treated the young guys well. So I'm standing there getting dressed, maybe the first, second day, and I'm watching him get dressed, and he's putting on felt shoulder pads, like arm pads, like they're the old 60s, right? And chest protector. And I'm just like, come on, I got to say something. Like I got to know him a little bit. He was pretty good to me. And I said, I got to ask you a question. Like I'm getting my, jumbo, stuff on my big Brown equipment on. And I said, how can you get in the net with that equipment and not be afraid? I mean, guys shoot the puck pretty good. You got Richard Martin, you got these guys can rip the shot. And he goes, listen, kid, when I'm in the net and the puck hits me here, I look down because I feel it. Number one, I felt it here. And I know I have to look to that side and that's where the puck will be. And I stood there for a second and I went, okay, this is a different era that I'm used to. These are guys now have played pro and are used to getting hurt and you're used to getting bruised. Stay in the game, right? They don't take days off, right? They don't make the millions of dollars. They need to be there. Availability is the best ability, right? You got to be there, right? I'm hurt, so don't tell anybody. And I was just shocked that they want to be able to move as well, right? They don't want to be constricted, but they want to feel the puck. I did not want to feel the puck. Not once. I want to feel it in my glove. That's it.
I don't mind feeling it. I just don't want to feel it 2 days later. Thank you very much.
That too. That's true. Yeah. And it's funny because I would know every time the season would start, I would look down at my arms. Yeah, they're the bruises. Yeah, they're back. Season's starting.
How much do you think that changed, like the fear factor, right? Like you talk about you had a great glove hand, right? Like you were known for your glove. You had to, if that fear factor's there, like you had to have a good glove. Guys made reactive saves with their hands because either they reached with their hands and caught it, if the alternative was putting your body in front of it when you weren't protected, that hurt. Like, how much did getting gear on, and at what stage of your career did you get a chest protector where you could stand in front of a slap shot and actually want to use your body as a save mechanism rather than wanting to catch everything, not because you got good hands, but because it saved you from getting beat up?
Well, it's interesting because a lot of the area that you were not protected would be right in through your collarbone area. We'd have the caps on the shoulders, right? Before the brown one piece.
Yeah.
Right? We'd have our chest protectors were decent, but they wouldn't cover much collarbone. We didn't have a throat protector. Right. So for me, I wasn't in fear of pucks because I got a lot of pucks and balls shot at me through my brothers all the time. Right. And it's so interesting, funny how you're groomed. It's just amazing. I'm 8 years old before I became a goalie, and I idolized this guy. He was a 15-year-old lefty, and I loved Roger Crozier back in the day. Right. So this guy was a lefty, and he was good. He was really good. He was a friend of my older brother. And he was out in the backyard of a school taking tennis balls and hitting me. And I went in the net and I got hit. And I got one. And I started crying. And he goes, "Yeah, way to go. That's it. Good stop." And I looked at him like, oh my God, I'm getting encouragement from my idol. So there's where the fear factor, I believe, went out of my psyche, was that day. And I hadn't started playing yet. So I wasn't in fear of the puck and stuff. And this is why as well, because I could get out of the way and I could catch pucks. I called dodge puck, right? You can't hit me, get out of the, because we practice so much, right? A lot of times, but I would give guys my glove side. I would give them more of my glove because I knew, go ahead, challenge me. I wasn't the greatest on the stick side, just above the pad like they do nowadays, right? We didn't butterfly like that a lot. We didn't butterfly slide back in the day. We were kick saves, but did the odd butterfly, right? I did because I was more athletic. But yeah, using your glove and saying, go ahead and bait me. And here, you think you can beat me with your shot? But yeah, if you didn't have a good glove hand and you were a little bit skittish of a puck coming, you're going to get hurt because these guys like to hit you as well, right? They like to see a little bit of pain on goalies sometimes. You really do think that these guys are sad. A little bit of a sadistic mind. And I can shoot a top shelf, hit the crossbar, no problem. But can I hit him in the shoulder? Just to see how mad he can get.
Yeah, no thanks. No thanks.
Yeah,
I get enough of that in beer league warm up and they don't shoot that hard. So, I mean, your career span, like we're talking about, you're talking about getting drafted by Buffalo in the late 70s. And by the end in the IHL with the Vipers and Las Vegas Thunder and Milwaukee Admirals, we're into the mid 90s. So equipment would have, I'm trying to remember, like you talked about butterfly and the pads you would have grown up with. Of course, there was no landing gear. There was no mechanism for that pad to actually rotate and land properly. But by the end, that stuff started to exist. Were you a guy that gravitated towards the new and trying new things that you thought could help your game? Or like you said, there were a lot of guys that I remember even starting to cover the league in 2000 and they were still, I don't want to say stuck in their old ways because they'd done it for decades that way, but they had equipment that didn't do that. They stuck with old equipment. Like you got to be a part of one of the greatest evolutions of equipment in your playing days, but did you actually use it?
Yeah, absolutely. I was not Donnie Edwards old school to hang on to that stuff because I was playing in Flint, Rangers farm team there, and a guy named Brian Heaton lived in just south of Detroit. So he started a goalie mask company and he needed guinea pigs, right, to try his masks out. So he just, for whatever reason, he came and we hit it off and he asked me to try some of his masks. So I tried some of his masks and I modified, some of the chin gear, kind of get like a football chin gear because I didn't want that to move around. So he started that. And so I started using his masks and then he started into the goalie pads. He started making Heatons and then good marketing.
Legend.
Right. So then he started making a marketing tool, right? And said, let's go with the Bryans. And hitting, he's double dipping, right? So he knows, okay, the Heaton thing is kind of going really well and I'll get out another company called Bryans. And people might think it's competing against Heaton or whatever. No, it's the same guy, same company, same everything, right? So yeah, the evolution of equipment. And it was mainly the pads as far as not being able to butterfly. They had no inside piece. They did a little bit right when I did, and I could butterfly good enough. We wore knee pads, big knee pads, right? Separate ones, right?
Right,
Put
because
them on.
there's no that the landing gear wasn't
No.
there.
No, so we had the big knee pads. We put them underneath our socks, and that could kind of help a little bit, right? But there wasn't a lot of butterfly goalies. 75, 76. Look at the NHL. Everything in the NHL was the minor leagues and the juniors were the same, right? So I like the butterfly, right? I like to be, because I played a lot of road hockey, a lot of mini sticks, right? So I'm on my knees, right? You're in the Quebec Pee Wee tournament. You're playing mini sticks more than you're playing your games, right? It's constant mini sticks is what I remember, right? So you're always on your knees. And was I playing goal? Yeah, probably. But still, it's the evolution of equipment really, I think, dictated how you played, right? And I like the new equipment because I wanted to be more protected as I got older, right? I'm now, 30s in the early 90s, and I'm on the other side of my career. I shouldn't say that because I played in the NHL at 33. So after when I was at the Vipers, and I'm 34, 35, the equipment, I think, was pretty much nothing really evolving for about 3 or 4 years until I got out of it. And it's so interesting because when I got out of it and got into scouting, you don't really pay much attention to the equipment anymore. But we would have scouts games. So I would go into the, go grab Chris Mason's pads or whatever. And I'm like, wow, are these ever big? And I'm getting my feet crossed up and my knees are getting in the way of each other. It was just, I had to adjust of how you have to play with this equipment. And that's the biggest adjustment. I think guys, they grew up with this equipment. They know how to play with this equipment. I don't think I could. It was just totally different.
So steel hockey, working with young kids out at Hollyburn here in Vancouver at the rink. What do you make now? Like when you pick up a set of Bauer pads that weigh under 4 pounds and they're made of this unique material and the pucks rocket off the face, on purpose, right? Longer rebounds, the way they slide. Like if you had a set of those, if Rick Knickle had a set of those growing up in Nova Scotia, how much easier would life have been, eh?
Well, yeah, I mean, and you always can't go back to say how much better could I have been, right? I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's all relevant. I had a pretty good run all the way up through,
But how much easier would life have been?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. The equipment, just like I look at some of these kids now, they're so much bigger to begin with. They don't need big equipment. We did. We weren't that big. We needed to cover net. And the big thing for me back in my day was I wanted my pads to stay tight to my toes and not move, right? We needed to have it that way. Where now they have that elastic band and the pads are moving because you have to rotate knee, get your knee down to butterfly slide. And so nothing's almost really attached. It really feels like I like things to be together, have it all in one piece.
Connected.
That's just connected. That's what just old school goalie equipment was like. Right now, there's just a lot of, Velcro and different pieces and the toes aren't attached. The rubber bands because they need it that way. And you see so many saves now being made. The guy's sliding and he's making the save with the top of his boot, because his pad is moved and it's stretched and because everything is moving away. But yeah, I love the style, the way they play now. I love the way the goalies play now. And I'm so amazed at the athleticism, how big they are and how good they are.
What do you focus on when you get a young, especially the younger ages? Because I think
basics.
We talked about skating, right? Like I see a lot of times guys are doing like RVH at 9 years old. Like what is your focal point? Yeah, I see you shaking your head. So more about skating and movement, eh?
Yeah, it's old school stuff, right? Fundamentals, hands, eyes, connecting to the puck right away, eyes, hips, hands, right? And eyes, hips, hands are turning to pucks, right? Everything's basic, straight on. That's easy, be in good position, tight elbows, relax, feel free to move, right? But eyes and hips and hands. And it's so gratifying to see when I preach to these kids, and I got some good kids, they're 11, 12, 13 years old, that now are using their sticks when they rebound, recovery, poke it, poke. So it gives you that extra second to recover, to get to your space, to get to where you need to get to, right? And I'm amazed. I got a 6-year-old that I teach. A 6-year-old, he's unbelievable and just nonchalant, knows because he lives and sleeps it. His dad tells me this, right? lives and sleeps it. He's just absorbing everything. And he does it. Butterfly slide in a package, square into the post. I'm like, you're 6? And I don't tell him to say, hey, you know what? Hey, every year you got to develop, get better and better and better. It doesn't mean if you're great at 6, right? But I'm just amazed at how good these kids are at a young age.
When you talk about edge work and skating, give me a couple examples of drills that you like that, I mean, they may be super simple, but things you like to do to make sure that young kids have that foundation built in right away on the skating side.
Well, I think a lot of it is, I tell them, you stay off your outside edge. Never use your outside edge, right? Because that's a skater, right? If kids go from skating to goaltending, right, they always think they turn their skates and they have to move to the right. They have to turn their outside edge. No, we're a shuffling T-push, mainly shuffling type of thing, but you have to have good inside edge and control, right? We're teaching kids that are young, muscle strength. That's something that's got to develop, right? So I have to take that in consideration. How strong are they? If you're a good skater, being able to push well, right? And get into your stride and push. And it's only a small area, post to post, blue paint area. But I see them in Hollywood, especially. A lot of kids are players, and they put them in goal because they like to play goal. They want to try it, and because they have a goalie coach there. So why not take advantage of that? But I'm pretty old school when I talk with kids, and I understand their styles and understand the butterfly style because I've been a scout and I've watched enough in the last 15 years of the transition of goaltending. But edge work and being able to push and being able to understand your edges and being able to, weight transfer, slight weight transfer, right? Core, slight weight transfer. And I really preach this too, because some kids don't know where the weight transfer. And that's okay. I want you to lean on your right side and then go and push to your left side. Oh, okay. Now, feel it. And just now modify it. Just bring it back to now you're either way, right or left. Core is there. I can go either way. And that's why I really preach. And I love that we have a Thatcher Demko here to watch as our local goalie and having one of the best goalie coaches in NHL or wherever in Ian Clark, that I say, did you guys watch Demko last night? Watch his small little shuffle movements. He's ready to coil. He's ready to unload. So I talk to kids, I say, explosion, right? Read, react, explosion when you need to be. And that is being relaxed. Don't be so tight and tense.
Tension is the enemy of goaltending, as Ian Clark would say.
Yeah. And I only do stuff that comes from my head. Like I've never read any goalie coaching books. I never did all of that. Right. And I think I don't want to oversaturate my brain with what I know and I believe. And it's just really basic for what I'm teaching. Right. I'm not teaching rocket science to these kids, and these kids are going to, take it for what they want to take it. Right. There are some development of some kids that are really good, and you say, hey, that kid's got a chance if he wants to be. Right? Other kids, okay, they're enjoying it. I actually got an email from a lady, a mom, that wants me to come out and do private lessons with her because she's joining a women's league. And she's a mom of probably maybe one of the kids that maybe I teach. Word of mouth got around, and so she's gonna do that. But
I love it. I love it.
It's amazing, Kevin, that how much you're around young kids and how good they are and how in control they are of their ability to push.
Okay, so let's go back to the career a little bit. Drafted by Buffalo. You talked about the camp with Don Edwards. Then a lot of like Rochester. Obviously, I recognize in the American League as a farm team, but then mid '80s, Flint, Sherbrooke, Saginaw, Fort Wayne. As you get into the 90s, as you move around, what are some of the memories that come out? Like I'm guessing there's stories. Some we probably can't tell, but what are some of the best memories of that time? And how did your game develop?
Well, it's interesting, right? I get drafted, and I go to training camp with a team that really wasn't needing goaltending.
Right.
Jacques Cloutier and me got drafted the same year. We were the two best goalies in the country. We played against each other in the Memorial Cup. We fought each other in a Memorial Cup brawl.
Hold on. Yeah, we got a goalie fight we didn't talk about?
Yeah. We had a brawl in Memorial Cup in 1979 in Three Rivers in their rink. We had a brawl and warm up. Everybody. 30-minute brawl. And I hear stories now of scouts. Okay. Now, if people know Trois-Rivières, it's a small little town. Picture a dirt road. Cars going either way, right? So we're talking May. It's a little muddy, right? So the row of scouts are sitting there. They're hearing this on the radio that there's a brawl going, and it's lasting 10 minutes, 15 minutes. I hear a lot of scouts left their cars and just went into the rink and said, I'll get my car later. Pulled it over and ran into the rink and left it there because they'd never seen anything like this before. But we had a really tough team. They thought they were going to be tough at home. We had a brawl. So I'm sitting there going to training camp, and Jacques Cloutier is there. So I'm looking at, okay, where is my career going to go, right? And so Jacques got the head start on me. He gets to play in Rochester that year. I go to the East Coast League. So I go to the East Coast League, win a championship there, top goalie in the league. So my career is, I'm starting a little bit one step below, but it's a baby steps, right? And this is maybe what I needed, right? So I had an easy career in junior as far as, playing behind a team like that I played for.
Yeah.
I mean, I had 8 losses, I think, in 100 games, right? And it's not very hard to, mentally be prepared and not have to go through all those downtimes, right? So go to training camps, play in the American League. After I played in East Coast League, Jacques gets moved up. Mike Keenan's my coach. And I've never had a coach that has been really hard on me, right? I've never been a goalie that coaches are hard on. I'm pretty consistent. I give you a really solid effort every game. I can win games for you. But that was just his stick, right? He used goalies as his thing, and I was his guinea pig. And I got pulled quite a bit, which what's to do for a goalie? My confidence level was so bad. And so I had to restart my career. So I said, you know what? I'm playing here in the American League. I'm not playing really well. I'm so. And so I asked them if I could go back to the IHL. I went back to the IHL to rebuild my career. So that's where I was, in Flint, in Saginaw. And I redid my career and top goalie of the league. And then I'm playing really well. And Sherbrooke needs a goalie. One of the goalies got hurt. So Montreal's farm team, so Serge Savard phones Dennis DeRozier, our coach, and says, do you have a goalie down there that we could use in the American League? And I had gone through enough in the American League, and I was 26 at the time, or 27. Said, yeah, I got a guy here. So they called me up. I'm playing 3 games in the weekend. I got first star in 2 out of the 3. I signed a 3-year deal on Monday. NHL deal. Okay, so I'm a free agent. So here we go again. My back's against the wall to get a contract. I go into Sherbrooke, I win 3-1. I go into Maine, I beat them 4-2. I got first star in both games. So they come with me, $5,000 check, signing bonus on Monday. Get my money. Okay, now I start to get back into reality again. I started to come back to earth. I didn't play that well. I was really, I was inconsistent at that time. And for whatever reason, I don't know why. So they were going to send me down to the IHL. Dennis DeRozier actually initiated this. He phoned Serge Savard. This is an unbelievable story. He phoned Serge Savard and said, Serge, I need a goalie. I'm lacking a goalie. I need a goalie. I've got one, but I need another guy. He says, I know you guys have extra guy up there. And he says, okay. Serge goes, okay. I got this young kid coming out of junior. He just finished his junior career. His name's Patrick Waugh. No one knew who he was, right? Patrick had a career in junior of 5 goals against average, same as Brodeur, right? A lot of shots, a lot of notoriety, really, right? So, and he goes, okay, I can send you Patrick Waugh, a young kid, starting his pro career, or we can send you back Rick Knickle. He goes, send me back Rick Knickle. He goes, I don't know who Patrick Waugh is. Send me back the guy that I know.
No.
Yeah. So I go back down to the I, play for Dennis, who I played with, right? So I got my career back and I started to play really well. I'm 29 years old, right? Going through the gamut. As you see, I went back. I retired at 29. I went home and I was contemplating my career. So I waited until the trade deadline because I knew in February, okay, if nothing happens, and I'll look and see who gets called up. And then I'll phone that team and I'll be able to maybe hook up with that team. Greg Millen gets traded from St. Louis. Daryl May gets called up to St. Louis. So I go to Peoria.
Yep.
Okay. So I drive down to Chicago, stay at Darren Pang's house. I have not played and put on gear for 2.5 months. So I sat on the couch for 2.5 months, contemplating my career. What am I going to do? Am I going to into coaching? Am I going to do whatever? And scouting wasn't a thought process at that time. So I go back down there and I'm playing for St. Louis's farm team. So I backed up the first game. I hadn't put on skates for 2.5 months, practiced once. But as you know, as a goalie, right, you feel it, right? I'm back. I wasn't ready to retire. The circumstances just, hey, there was no jobs. Nobody would give me a training or tryout or anything. So we lose 9-2 that night at home. So we're playing in Milwaukee the next night. Coach comes to me and says, can you play tomorrow? 12 o'clock game. I said, absolutely. So guess what happens? I beat Milwaukee 4-2, stopped 40 shots, stopped the penalty shot. I was in the dressing room after and I'm going, I'm back. Someone's got to notice, right? Sure enough. Okay. So I played the next 7 or 8 games. We're in the playoffs. So they just told me, I said, of course, I'm on adrenaline, right? So I came back to earth again, played 3 or 4 or so games. He said, no, you're going to play in the playoffs. So I'm playing in the playoffs for St. Louis's farm team. Bob Plager's around. All the scouts are around, right? I'm going to get a contract for sure. So I go back that summer. Nothing happens. They already had their guys. As I know, no room. So then I get a contract with Fort Wayne in the IHL. And that's where my career kind of, I had more or less decided I'm not going to get called up. I'm not going to sign an NHL contract. I'm just going to play to have fun. I'm going to go where I want to go. So I played in Fort Wayne, top goalie in the league, first all-star team. And then Donnie Waddell gets a team in San Diego. Okay, Donnie I've known for 35, 40 years. Played with him, coached me. Gets a team out in San Diego. I'm in Springfield in the American League. I get called up, right? Because our team, and I don't think it was in Albany or whatever, we folded. I go to Springfield. Jimmy Roberts knew me from Buffalo. Jimmy Roberts is there, right? Kay Whitmore's there. So we win the championship. All the young guys are there that you would know. Mark Bergevin, Terry Yake, John Stevens, Todd Richards. So I hooked up with that team. We won the championship. Okay, to back up 1 year, the year before, I'm in San Diego playing with Sean Burke. We lose in the first round. What do you do after you lose out? Well, you're at the bar for 2 days straight, having a good time, and then you're going home. I get a phone call from Adirondack. Nick Polano. I don't know if you know Nick Polano. Nick Polano is my first pro coach, became Detroit's pro scout, been in the business for 50 years. Outstanding man, was very, very good to me. He phones me up. He says, listen, we're going to win the championship in Adirondack. We got all the young guys again, Keith Primo, all those Detroit guys who went on to play for the Red Wings. He said, we get Alan Bester, but we don't have a backup that can push Alan Bester to play his best. He said, can you get here tomorrow? He said, you don't have to play. You don't have to back up. You just have to practice and be ready in case we might want to use you or might want to use you as a backup. Like, here we go again, right? So I'm hung over.
It's a different era, man. Wow.
Different era.
A
different era, right? I'm a free agent. I can go wherever I want. So I get there the next day. So I come in the dressing room. I meet them in New Haven. And a couple of guys we played in Springfield the year before. And they said, oh, our good lucky charms here. We're going to win again. See, I've won 5 rings in my career. I lost a Memorial Cup and I lost a Stanley Cup. I got 5 rings in the minors, pro championships. So people started to think of me maybe as a lucky charm. I don't win. I'm not the top goalie on the team. I don't win any MVPs. But anyway, I go there, and that's where I met Barry Melrose. So we hooked up there. Okay, so we win the championship. So we're in the bar, and that's where Gabby came and played with us. Gabby came with us as a black ace. Me and Gabby were black aces.
Bruce Boudreau.
Yep, Bruce Boudreau. So that's where and Gabby, I played against Gabby for years, right? And we knew each other. And him and Barry Melrose played together in the WHA, I believe, in Cincinnati, right? So we're sitting there smoking cigars, right? And Barry says, what's it going to take to get you to come and, I'll get you a contract with Detroit and you could be the goalie next year here and help out Chris Osgood because he's turning pro. Right? Because people looked at me as a good older guy that wouldn't jeopardize a young guy's career, would help him, which is what I've always did. I played with Bob Asenza. I played with Beauregard. I played with all these guys that passed me by, and I'm better than them in their year that I'm playing with them. And they go on to NHL because they're younger. They got contracts. And at that time, I didn't have it. So Barry says, I said, it's going to cost you a lot of money. You know where I'm playing, right? San Diego. Come on, to go and play in Lake George and, in Adirondack, and it's cold. And I said, I've been there, done that. I didn't want to do that anymore. Right. So I said, where I said, anyway, I said, I'm going back there, and it didn't work out. Well, what happened that summer?
Barry Melrose got hired by the Los Angeles Kings. So
I phoned him up and I said, listen, how about a tryout? So I phoned Rogie Vachon, right? And they said, we got contracts. We just don't have any room, blah, blah, blah. I said, well, yeah, no worries. I said, you know where I'm playing. I'm 100 miles down the road. I never thought anything of it, right? I'm following it vaguely. Keith Gretzky's playing on my team. Me and Keith are tight. We're Buffalo Sabre guys, right? So I heard that Wayne was talking when Kelly Rudy was going through ups and downs like we always go, all goalies go through. And Wayne wasn't playing at the time. I think he was hurt. So they were looking around. And in their head office, they had Nick Beverly as a GM and they had Roy Malarker as the president. Okay. And Rick Dudley was my guy from Buffalo. We're at training camp together, and I've known Duds the same as I know Donnie Waddell. So these guys are running San Diego, and they're talking to Rick Dudley, and they're just venting, right? We're thinking of making a trade. We're thinking about trading for Darren Pupa. That's what they told Rick Dudley. And Rick Dudley told them, don't do it. I got a goalie here that's better than Darren Pupa. Why don't you give him a try? Which was me. And they knew of me, I'm sure, right? Over a career, they would look it up or figure, people knew me or whatever. I know Roy Malarker knew me. And that's how it started. And Wayne thought I was under contract, so he thought that he'd have to trade for me. I was a free agent. And that's how I got to LA. I mean, you work your way down the line here, and as people that you know on the timing of everything, right? Do you think that I'm sitting at home at 33 years old that I'm going to get a chance at the National Hockey League? No way. And when it happened, I was ready. Mentally, I was ready. I wasn't ready at 22, 23 years old. If I had a chance to go up there and play and fail some games and get my feet wet, yeah, I think I would have been able to do it. I seen other guys that did it, but I put them on the pedestal too high in my own mind and where I came from. And once you get in a room, it's, everybody's everybody. But I knew a lot of the guys on that team, and they made it feel really comfortable. Pat Conacher, a couple other guys I played against in the Western Hockey League. So, that's my rise to the NHL. And it's really interesting how, if I'd retired and what I had thought about it, did I really get out of the game because I wasn't good enough anymore? No, the circumstances what they were at 29. And after 29, Kevin, I played the best that I played in my career.
Okay, so I want to ask you a little bit, because one of the things you said after retirement and making decisions like going to San Diego that jumped out to me was you just wanted to play to have fun.
Yep.
How much did letting go of all, because a lot of the other conversations as you've been talking, it sounds like you're always looking at opportunities, which was the nature of the job. You had to find places to play. But when you're thinking about other things like where am I going next and what's my career doing, and you're not in the moment, we know this now, right? We got sports psychologists for every goalie from a young age, right? Yeah. Staying in the moment, and there's ways to do it. It sounds like when you just disconnected from results and started to play just to have fun, am I guessing it's not a coincidence that that's when you rose to the level of the National Hockey League? And as you said, played your best.
Yeah, I didn't worry about who was watching me, right? I didn't worry about which NHL team was, how did I look? How did I look, right? How did I look was it looking good enough to be an NHL guy? I mean, not that the style I was thinking. I was, how did people perceive me when I was playing? And I would have one corner of my eye wondering, how did I look in that save? And I wasn't a precise, technical guy. I was a freelancer. I felt like I was a freelance type of goalie with structure, right? I could play that way. I always say this. I'm trying to think of it. Controlled chaos, right? I had that, but yeah, absolutely. I just felt like I'm 29 years old. It ain't going to happen, and I felt for my dad more than anybody. The dad is always, people coming up to him at the golf course. Hey, how's your son doing? He's going to make it this year. right? Because he knew John Brophy's and guys like that at his golf course, and not those guys, but people would come up and talk to him all the time and ask him. And like I said, we had a really close bond. We still do, right? It's, that is my wanting to do it for my dad more so than me, right? But yeah, after I let it go, it was, the talent has always been there, right? But as a goalie and a guy that's now studied this position a long time, it's not just having talent. It's not just having talent. Now, you better be able to figure it out in your head and manage things in bad times and scrambles and chaos. And, it's not just, it's not as easy as people might think. And I think a lot of people don't think that, but once they talk on the outside, then they get in there and go, it's not as hard as, it's something that really, I let it go. And I'm glad that I did, because it fulfilled my career that I don't know what I would have thought after. I retired at 29 and just wonder, And
instead
I got to do it, which is it's really gratifying to me, because people recognize that too, right? A lot of people didn't know minor league goalie. There's a lot of guys, but to get to play in the NHL, and I was talking. I actually saw it last night. Kenny Holland talking about his first NHL game, and I played against Kenny a little bit, and in the minors, and him feeling that way, right? This could be my only NHL game, right? Because does it feel like it's way out of my realm that I'll be able to stay here? Yeah, that's something you have to battle with, right?
Well, I was gonna ask you. I was gonna follow up as you're talking there with what it meant to you to get that opportunity. You go 6-4 with the Kings that first year. But I think you've kind of already told me. What did it mean? Maybe what did it mean to your dad? What did it mean to have? Do you remember the moment when you told your dad you were going to play in the National Hockey League?
Yeah, I got a call. Well, when it happened, right? I mean, I was talking to Rick Dudley, and he said, "Don't tell anybody. It's going to happen here in the next week." And so I come out of the room, and there's Keith working on a stick. So I'm talking to Keith Gretzky, and I knew I could talk to him and tell him, and he said, "I know who it is." But he didn't tell me which team it was. He just told me there's an NHL team looking at you and wanting to probably sign you and bring you up halfway through a season. And, so it's, you're going through all the stuff that's not going to happen, right? Because there's a lot of stuff that's been negative in my career that I've always looked at to say, it's going to hit the wall. It's not going to happen. There's no way, because I think if they're going to get somebody that's played in the league, let alone me of a guy like that. But once I got there and I backed up the first game in Minnesota and we won 10-5. So Kelly Rudy goes, I'll find out. I'll ask Barry who's playing tomorrow. So Kelly goes in and comes back to me and says, "You're playing tomorrow in Chicago." And I know Chicago's a very, very difficult place to play.
Yeah.
Very difficult, let alone getting up the stairs.
I've heard these. I've never been.
Very, very small stairs for a goalie to be able to walk, and it's steep, right? And I got a lot going on, right? So about a week before, I had food poisoning. So I really wasn't 100%. A lot of nerves, a lot of anxiety. Not nervous about how I'm going to play. Really, in my mind, I think I'll get comfortable as I get going. But you never know. I could give up the first shot. And then you're going to get into one of those games. Oh, I've been there, right? Now I'm at the top level. I don't want that to happen. But when I got to play my first game and I played really, really well, even though I let in 7, I was the best 7-goal game I had in my life. And a lot of the other team recognized that, because I played with Brian Noonan. I played against Eddie Belfour. And so a lot of these guys, Dirk Graham, Brent Sutter, I think. Yeah, Brent Sutter. So in the paper the next day, they gave me a lot of good kudos. A lot of good kudos of, we knew this guy before. We knew we weren't going up against somebody that we didn't know about. We never faced him maybe, but people in our dressing room told us about him. Of course, they're going to talk. Who is this guy?
Yeah.
So I got there and lost my first game. So now I'm really sick. I'm really, really sick. The next day, I'm dehydrated. I mean, I went through a lot that night. I got interviewed by Dave Hodge in my hotel room. My brother wrote a letter to Dave Hodge before I got to the National Hockey. This is unbelievable karma. My brother's always been a big advocate of mine. He wrote a letter to Dave Hodge and told Dave Hodge that you should interview my brother for what he has done in his career. I'd played like 600 games or something like that, and umpteen teams and whatever, right? And a week later, I signed with the Los Angeles Kings, and I did the interview with Dave Hodge. He had my brother's letter, and he said this. I didn't know my brother wrote the letter. He said, yeah, we got a letter from your brother Dale. I went, what? He goes, yeah, we got a letter from your brother Dale. He wrote us a letter about you and now how things have come right around to us that you actually did sign an NHL contract. So anyway, to continue on, I got a chance to rest. We went to Washington. They said to get your own room, take care of yourself, get some chicken soup and all that stuff, right? Because I still had the bug inside me, and I had to play a really, really hard game.
Yeah. And
I was spent. I was done. And so I'm watching the game, and I never ever wished any of my goalie partners to play bad and have bad games. I want myself to be the one that I will outplay him, and I will take the ball and be better than him. Not that he has to play bad. That makes me look good.
Right.
I hated that. And so we're playing in Washington. We got beat 7-2. So they said, you're going to be playing in Tampa Bay. In Tampa Bay at the time, they didn't have their big rink yet. They were still building it. So they played in a 7,000 seat arena. My mom and dad lived 30 minutes from Tampa Bay. They live in Lakeland in the wintertime. So my mom and dad are there about 7 rows up to my left by the faceoff dot. My dad's best friend, who he grew up with, who doesn't believe anybody's any good. I'm just saying that because my dad would tell me, and I know this guy very, very well. Really good friend of the family's. And my sister, who's never seen me play. Oh. Really never seen me play, right? So I played the game and I got first star. I beat Tampa 5-2. Wayne got second star. And yeah, so this is a scenario. My mom and dad are sitting there and they're watching me play my second NHL game, right? So now I know I'm feeling I belong, and the feeling when I'm walking back to the dressing room because I got the puck, because guess who was at the other end? Wendell Young. We are both from Dartmouth, Nova Scotia. Wendell was a guy that played. He's 3 years younger than me. So he would watch me play Tier 2. And Wendell went on to play in the NHL, Pittsburgh, Vancouver.
Yep.
Right. So he jumped in and didn't get that minor league stigma, which a lot of guys get. I had it.
Yep.
At 26. Why haven't you made it? Right. So I'm walking back to the dressing room and my whole career is going through my mind as I'm walking through. And I get back to the dressing room and I'm in tears almost. And Barry Melrose comes up to me and says, what's wrong? What's going on? I said, hey, come on, these are tears of joy, man. This is built up, not frustration or whatever, but it was just that. And then I did what I did.
In front of your dad?
In front of my dad. And my mom, yeah. I come outside and there's hordes of people. Like I get interviewed like crazy. They had to wait out there for about an hour and a half. So I go out there. My sister jumps at me and hugs me. I never hugged my sister in my life. We weren't that, we're not a touchy-feely family like some aren't, but, we're all.
You got me welling up over here. You got me welling up here. This might be the first time I cry on a podcast.
It is. It has me that way because I think about it, right? And that was for my dad, really. It was so much for my dad. And get to play in the NHL and feeling that way that, this is the league that I watched religiously. And here's another good story that really hit home with me. Ken Dryden said the same thing. He couldn't believe that now he's playing in that box that he used to watch. All these guys. And that's what stuck in my head for such a long time, maybe not consciously, but subconsciously. How can I be that small kid from an Air Force base, get inside and people are going to be watching me on TV? Crazy. Ken Dryden saying that. Like, it's funny that Kenny Holland, here's another connection of a story with Kenny Holland and me. When I retired, guess what I did for about 2 months? Electrolux vacuum cleaner salesman.
Seriously?
That's what Kenny did. That's what Kenny did. Yeah. Kenny was 29. I was 28. We were just doing it because whatever we wanted to do was just a friend of mine had a company and said, hey, would you like to help me out and do some demonstrations for me? And, I'll pay you, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. I did that for 2 months until I got to Peoria on the trade deadline that same year. And Kenny was telling that story the other day, and I went, no way. He had just retired, figuring out what he wants to do. And his mother pushed him to the Electrolux salesman because she knew someone there, I guess.
Oh my God.
Unreal, like stories that we have in this business of hockey, if you're around long enough, right? And I've been around, play with about 1,000 players. You know, I've never had a job in my life, really, right? And that was not going to be my job. And Kenny knew it too. He said, that's not going to be my career. But it's funny, like people look at him, vacuum cleaner salesman, because the stigma, okay, door to door, right? Encyclopedia salesman, door to door, right?
Oh my God. There's kids now that don't even know what an encyclopedia is. They just look it up online. Listen, that is the perfect place to wrap up. We've been talking for over an hour.
Wow.
I think we just have to hold and maybe do a second part 2 one of these days where we go over life as a scout and get into that. But I don't want to stop this interview as much as this would be the perfect, I'm basically rubbing tears out of my eyes here. I do want to give you a chance to I want to talk about Team 33 and what you've got going there. So I want to make sure we include that in this. Just walk me through it. And to be honest, this is a great jumping. We can get into the scouting another time. This has been so good. I got to be honest with you. Like among all the things you've done, including vacuum sales, there is attempted vacuum sales, right?
Yeah.
There is probably a story at each stop here. Like honestly, you should have your own podcast just to tell stories about your career, because there's been about 30 different ones here that have takeaways that kids should.
I was asked to write a book. I actually sat down with a lady in Los Angeles to write a book many years ago. Well, my brother says this too, right? He's the guy that keeps a journal on my career, right? He does that stuff. But anyway, we'll digress to another time. But Team 33, for me, is a pro scouting company that me and Mike Santos, who was my assistant general manager in Nashville when I was there, and he came up with this platform, so to speak, as an assistant GM, and looking for easier, better ways to evaluate players, put now money to players, and doing more just than analytics. And he's not an analytics guy, more algorithms and things like that. So I said, well, Mike, I know all the players. I said, you're going to need data. You're going to need to be able to put all the players in their rankings and ratings and where they fit in categories and all that. And he said, let me do that. I'll watch the games for a year and a half here, and we'll set the company up. And that's what we've done. And we now presented it to as many NHL teams as we can. We're not replacing any scouting staff. Okay, so we're another tool like Central Scouting is for the amateur side, which is very list orientated. It is not game reports. You can't see anything. You can't ask any scout. We have 12 scouts on our staff, all some Hall of Famers. We got Pete Mahovlich as our guy that with Mike was a figurehead. They worked together in Florida. He's got a lot of connections. So we do game reports. We're like any staff. As you see me at the games, I do the game reports. I hooked up with RinkNet because we were the first team in Nashville to hook up with Jim Price. So we hooked up with RinkNet. I said, okay, Mike, let me partner up with RinkNet. So now we have a software and we can do that because all the teams know RinkNet.
Right.
Because they use it. And so that's what we're doing right now. Anaheim and Montreal uses our system. We see some trades that they've made, a lot of them, and we put a lot of value, meaning number value on draft picks. Like, for instance, if a draft pick is a first-round pick, I got it up right now, actually. I think it's valued, 377 points. Okay, so everything is out of 1,000. So how we did this was 32 teams. Mike asked me how many on each team are prospects that are actually NHL guys in their whole realm of things. And I said probably about 33. And he said, I think about the same. 21 NHL, 5 or 6 American League, 7 or whatever, and down the list, your prospects and whatever. So you multiply the 32 teams by 33, we come up with 1,000.
So you're quantifying. So you're quantifying. You're quantifying value and assessing value through scouting mechanisms, not analytics in terms of like just straight numbers, like
hockey
shooting
sense,
percentage and things
play,
like that.
All that. And it's really not even so much of like you were saying, like we could go analyze the paralyze on. We said, okay, let's take 10 categories out of 100, right? What's that get you? 1,000. So we kind of kept it together, right? And we did it coordinating with a 7-round amateur side, putting it over to where each round would quantify a number. Like the first rounders are valued at about 377, right? As they go along, they're going to develop one way or the other, better or worse, right? So if you can imagine in my mind, every number that Connor McDavid is the number that's the highest. He would be about 970. No perfect player, but 10 categories. What does he rate? And then you go from there. And so this is what we have, and NHL teams can look at that and combine the draft pick value with the prospect value, with the player value, and it all is in synergy.
And of course, they have their own notes on these players. They have their own analysis, and they can they can compare what their scouts say to what your scouts say, and maybe it matches perfectly, and it's a reassurance of how they're approaching things, and sort of becomes a rubber stamp. Or maybe you see something they didn't, and they double check. So it sounds like there's a lot of value there. Just an extra set of eyes, and a lot more than one set of eyes, and quantified in a way that they can assess it differently.
Yeah, we've got more scouts than they do.
Right.
They've got probably 4 pro scouts per team in general around there. We got 12 to 14. We have more eyes on players, more viewings. And we know that sometimes scouts or GMs will ask their scouts and they'll have a discrepancy, right? So where does he go? We're a third party, unbiased opinion. That's the key thing. Unbiased. We have no stake in it. We have no skin in the game. I've been a scout on teams where I latch on and keep my players and love them till the end of time. And sometimes I should let it go. They have developed in a bad way or a different way. Don't keep hanging on to something that's really not factual and true to what's going on right now. Right?
That's perfect. There you go. Let it go. Much like your career, once you did, it took off up to the National Hockey League. Got to let go of some of those things as a scout too. A perfect synergy, a perfect way for us to wrap up. Rick, I promise there's a part 2 because I enjoyed this so much, and I know our audience is going to. I can't believe that after all these years of just shooting the crap with you in the press box and hearing all these amazing stories, it took me this long to bring you on. I apologize for that. I promise it won't be that long before part 2, my friend.
You're busy, man. I know you are, Kevin. And like I said, I don't hold it against you at all. I'm really, I don't go solicit these things, right? I'm pretty private as a person, that my small town values come out of me, but I really enjoy these things. And I've been asked to do them. I can't get off them.
You should. Well, we'll talk next time at the rig. This is the problem. Awesome. We have such good conversations that it's so organic and natural that I never thought, hey, like the rest of the world needs to hear these stories. My brain just didn't go there because I was always just kind of engaged in the moment with you. And I think that's what's going to make this so good. The last hour and 10 minutes, I've been engaged in the moment with you, and our audience will be too. Thanks, Rick. We'll see you at the rink soon, my friend.
Awesome. Thanks, Kevin.
Did you forget we were even here? That Hutch and I were still around because you got so captivated by the stories and the conversation between Rick and Woody. It just makes the entire world disappear. Now, Rick and I we go back way to the Brandon days, way, way, way back. We've been buddies forever. I got to be honest, and I'd say this to Rick. Sometimes I think that I'm too close to the fire, that the stories I hear are funny and stuff, but I don't know whether it's bigger picture. Hearing Woody talk about this in such glowing terms makes me feel bad that we haven't had Rick on before, and just gives credit to what an amazing journey that he's had.
It's incredible. And like I said, it really is story time with Rick Knickle. It should be its own podcast. We could do little segments, just little snippets, 15 minutes at a time of different stories from different areas. I'm sure as he said, there are many more, some which can't be told on our family-friendly podcast. But there are lessons in there. And a great lesson for head coaches. Like Mike Keenan and his constantly pulling him just destroyed the confidence of a guy who went into that season with a ton of it. So if you're doing it just for the sake of doing it and you're not explaining it, coaches, just think of what that could do to a young kid. Hutch, you talked about, and Rick talked about not failing when he was younger, like just having nothing but success. That can be a problem too. There were so many lessons in there, even through the stories like I said, some of them were how not to. We know now that you shouldn't be looking over your shoulder to see what scouts are in the building, right? We know that. We have sports psychologists that give us specific methods to prevent us from focusing on the wrong things, right? But that didn't exist back then. And I just, the other part where he just decided to let it go and go have fun. And that's when his career finally started arcing up right up to the National Hockey League. Like, that's not a coincidence, right? That's not a coincidence. So within the great stories are some great lessons as well that I think every goalie, whether you're in beer league or a parent with a young goaltender, can take something away from.
That message, Woody, of, as soon as he started to just have fun and relax, I think that's so important. But that bit where he said he just found things way too easy all along the way. He never played for a team that wasn't dominant right up through the Western Hockey League. And if you don't learn how to lose early, what happens when you hit that first roadblock? So I think that's a good message for parents on both sides. Don't always go searching for that team that's going to be dominant. Try and get your kid on that team that just wins, because they're not getting the lessons they need. At the same time, if you're in a tough situation, just realize it's making you a better goaltender. Tough it out. And learning to lose and learning to struggle is so important as a goaltender. And I just loved Rick's message and where that came through. The other one that stood out for me, it's a little quote I'd love to just put on my wall. I don't know if you heard it. Availability is the best ability. I thought that was such a great line. And making yourself available to teams who need a little bit of help is so important. And you can do that as a young goaltender as well. I've heard of players even around here who've been invited to go out and play with a junior team. And they're like, the practice is late, or I've got school in the morning, or I got to work on this. Availability is the best ability. Help out a team. If they know that you're around, they're going to keep calling. So,
well, having school in the morning is not a bad excuse.
That one jumped out at me too.
I've heard it for a 9 p.m. practice. I mean, come on, you'll be fine.
I still use it now.
You better keep sleeping, Woody.
I think I should. I think
take a longer nap.
Availability is the best ability. I'm going to put it up on the wall. See how my wife reacts, because I gotta say, in a total aside, since the pandemic, the shortage of beer league goaltenders, I could play every night of the week if I wanted to, or if I thought I could still stay married if I did. Like, it is unreal. So yes, availability is the best ability. Hun, it's important to my career. I'm going out to play for the 6th straight night tonight. And yes, it's a random team you've never heard of, somebody I met once 6 years ago, but they need help and I've got to do it.
If you're not there, they won't call next time, Woody.
You'll be borrowing more than underwear from them, like the couch, if you keep doing that.
If it's a late enough start, I could just find a spot on the bench in the locker room after there and spend the night.
You ever had a nap in a rink?
Oh, 100%.
In a rink room?
100%. Not the best naps, but goalie gear can provide good cushioning.
Yeah, but you fall asleep fast. Those lights come down. It's just it's perfect.
I had that happen to me one time. I just laid down, closed my eyes, needed a little rest between sessions, and of course they've got those automatic lights in most dressing rooms now. And I woke up and the lights were off, and I was so disoriented. What has happened? Then it came to me.
You're back.
Gotta love those.
Well, I mean, it depends on whether you are. The question here is, did you fall asleep or did you pass out? Because it's called beer league hockey for a reason.
No, I fell asleep, Woody. That was during the day, a hard working day, but I hear you, buddy. Well,
then the can rolled across the room and illuminated the automatic lights, and he knew exactly where he was. It was perfect. Hey, what's going on over at the website?
We got a fresh drill up and it's a good one. Nice, simple one. It's called the 1-2 drill with the San Jose Sharks. Thomas Spear walks us through it. Featuring both James Reimer and Capo Kakinen. Just a quick little shooter on either side, walks us through the explanations, beat it on your feet using shuffles, key to sort of triggering it with a head down mentality and build that rotation and not sliding, beat it on your skates. That's a good drill. Don't forget, folks, we have, actually, this might be the first podcast since we put it up. The double dip on recoil with Linus Allmark. We probably should have mentioned this earlier in the podcast because I've actually had NHL goalie coaches reach out and touch base about maybe, hey, can I get a subscription? I want to read that article. The idea that recoil, drift, a little bit of purposeful backwards drift. And everyone's like, well, no big deal. I've had people reach out like, what's the deal? Goalies have always flowed backwards on me. Yeah, off the rush, but not necessarily on end zone play. And so the idea that Essenza teaches and has taught through Tim Thomas, through Tuukka Rask, and now Jeremy Swayman, and obviously Linus Ullmark. We heard a little bit from Brandon Bussi last week, trying to make that adjustment. Bussy, pardon me. The idea of setting in square, but once you square, you don't stay set. You don't hold edges. You don't stay in one spot. You get just a little, ever so slight backwards flow as that shot's coming or as that guy's loading up that shot, and how it buys you a little more time as long as you keep your hands active to see the puck before you make a save. And if it gets passed instead, you're already flowing backwards, so it's an easier push. As Essenza told me, he's not a physics major, but bodies in motion tend to stay in motion. Or in a world where so much offense is created by throwing junk across the crease, having it hit legs, sticks, and deflect everywhere, broken plays we call them. Again, you're moving in the right direction. That recovery is easier. We got a whole article dedicated to it. Linus did his pro reads with us. I focused on one of the pro reads where there was a little bit of that element to it, so that we had a visual example and him talking about an example over video. It's a fascinating, I'll be honest with you, it was written about earlier this season. We're not the first to it. I think it was in the Boston Globe, and the reporter reached out to me, and I hadn't had a chance to really watch a ton of film because life was busy. And I saw the quotes, and I assumed that we were talking about momentum builds. A little bit I think the guys over at Stop It will call it a J hook. Like you're in the butterfly and you use, instead of a reverse C cut from your knees where you use that lead skate to generate momentum before. I didn't think we were talking about purposely drifting backwards off the shot because I didn't think anyone did it. And maybe that's my ignorance. I always thought that set and square was this foundational part of goaltending. And here we have one of the best guys, the best guy in the league right now, statistically by clear sight, in Linus Ullmark, drifting backwards on purpose and talking about how buying into that this year, after resisting it a little bit last year, has been a big part, not the only part, because Linus has always had a ton of talent, but a big part of what's going to be, I believe, a Vezina Trophy winning season. And so it's a fascinating article. The fact it's accompanied by a pro reads to match it, I would highly recommend checking it out at ingoalmag.com. Probably something, like I said, we should have teased an hour and a half ago.
Evolution, right? Never stops. Even when you think, what is happening there? And you do a little bit of investigation, there's a part of it that sort of takes it to a next level.
It's the perfect example of why I love this position, because there are no absolutes, even on something that I thought was an absolute. I thought set and square was an absolute in goaltending in certain situations. And Linus, first one to say, like, this isn't an every situation thing. But in the right situations, it certainly helped them. And this is why we love the position. There's no one way to do it. There's always new things. Eyes always being opened. And I love that at In Goal, we get to be a vehicle to share that with the world. And it does not happen unless guys like Bob Essenza and Linus Ullmark are open to helping other goalies. Linus, after our pro read, said this is him giving back. That's what he told me. He sees this as giving back to the goalie community as a whole. Bob Essenza, when I said, hey, I don't want to give too much away here, are you okay to share? Said the goalie world has done so much for me. Of course, I'm happy to share this. And walked us through the specifics, and you can be walked through the specifics of it too with a subscription to ingoalmag.com. You can check that article out right now.
Another buddy of mine, the great John Shannon, television producer extraordinaire in Canada, has a book out. It's called Evolve or Die is the subtitle of it, which is sort of the path that we take to goaltending. You got to evolve or else you're going to be left behind. Now, I don't think it's as good as availability is the best ability, but it's makes a lot of sense. They're both tracking in the right direction.
100%. That would be a good title for a goalie book right about now, for sure.
Hutch, that's what you do. You evolve every week. You continue to bring us different angles to it. Biggest fan right here. Can you sign my yearbook?
Oh, dude, I'm going to put that somewhere on the website under testimonials.
Will you sign my yearbook?
Thanks to Rick Knickle for stopping by, and not the last time that you will hear from him, and unless, of course, the idea of him starting his own podcast with Woody comes about, then you'll have to check that one out. over on a different platform, or a simultaneous platform, parallel platform with In Goal Radio, the podcast. Appreciate it. Cam, I'm with you every step of the way. Thanks to the folks over at the Hockey Shop, source for sports Langley, thehockeyshop.com, and Sense Arena VR. We'll talk to you next week on In Goal Radio, the podcast.